Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest all the way from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to the show, Dr. Anas Alhajji.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here. You are one of the preeminent energy analysts in the world, and I follow you regularly on other podcasts that you regularly appear on. I'm excited to have you on the show because, frankly, energy is the economy. For every unit of GDP that's output in the world is an equivalent unit of energy consumed somewhere in the world. And we are in the midst of an energy shock right now. That's no secret. But I'd love to get some of your insights as to what's happening behind the headlines. You know, we hear about the price of oil. There is no one price of oil, as you know. We often hear about, WTI, West Texas Intermediate, as the benchmark, but it's not really the benchmark. There's so many others that are worth paying attention to. As we look forward, of course, there's the Strait of Hormuz that's catching the headlines. There's the Red Sea. There's so many actors coming into play here who don't have a front row seat at the negotiations. How do you see this playing out over the next little bit?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. The problem is way, way worse than what people expect. We do have what I call basically is the three C's crises. And we talk about the three C's crises. We are talking about the Gulf, we are talking about the Red Sea, and we're talking about the Black Sea. And we should not forget about what Ukraine is doing in Russia and the impact of that. And this is very important because while the media and the social media was obsessed with what was going on in Saudi Arabia when the Houthis attacked Jazan refinery and the Iranian cronies in Iraq basically attacked Gig in Saudi Arabia, people were obsessed with that. And they did not notice that the losses, the amount of oil lost in the Black Sea is multiples of what was lost in Saudi Arabia. And they did not even talk about it. So we lost massive amount of oil because of the attack of the Ukrainian attacks. It's multiples of what we lost in Saudi Arabia. And yet the media and the social media did not focus on that. But the energy crisis is really way bigger than that. So we have the three C's crises. As if this is not enough, we have problems with the Panama Canal. So it's not only Bab el-Mandeb or the Hormuz Strait, simply because of low water levels. So they have to ration basically the number of ships that go through. At the same time, as if this is not enough, we have the Rhine River in Germany and throughout the area basically is so low that barges cannot go through and they cannot transport the petroleum products and everything else. And as if this is not enough, because of the heat wave in Europe, the water heat or the water temperatures in the rivers basically is a little bit high, and it's high for the nuclear plants. And therefore, France basically was forced to shut down plants and use oil instead. So we have multiple crises around the world, all of them coalesced in a way that it just never happened before. You add to it other things such as the heat wave in various areas, and you add to it the other issues in the Middle East, like in Libya, for example, we have shut down of a couple of fields. As a result, they start reopening them today. So that was one problem. So in a sense, it's just kind of like a never-ending situation that we are in. And if you look at what happened, you mentioned various types of crudes. One of the biggest mistakes that happened in analyzing the oil market is that everyone expected that oil prices will increase substantially because of the closure of Hormuz. But the people who talk about this, especially in the media and social media, are Western people. What does that mean is they focus on WTI and they focus on Brent, not realizing that what matters really is the price of Dubai and Oman and the price of medium sour crude in Asia. Why medium sour crude? Because most of the oil that we lost from the Hormuz crisis is medium sour. As a result, what they did not pay attention to was that oil prices increased substantially. We do have people, respectable people, until today, in very high up places, they think prices did not increase, not realizing when you tell them that prices did increase above 170 and some shipments sold for about 200, they look at you as if you are from another planet.
Exactly. I mean, you look at aviation fuel. I mean, if you look at the spot price for aviation fuel, it's 4x what it was prior to the invasion?
Absolutely. So we do have massive increases in prices, even in crude and in products, basically, like you said, it went through the roof. But some of those guys still, oh, well, Brent's still under 100. There is manipulation in the market. It has nothing to do with Brent. It has nothing to do with WTI. You got to look at what's happening on the ground, specifically in Asia.
Right.
And so that is part of the problem. The other part of the problem, basically, and this is indirectly related to real estate. People have to understand that the crisis we have right now is not a crude crisis. It is petroleum products crisis.
Yes.
And to prove this point, first of all, many people show charts, whether banks or others, on the massive decline in total global inventories. This is a misleading chart. And the reason why, because they are mixing apples and oranges. They are mixing commercial inventories with strategic petroleum reserves. This is a big problem. Why it is a big problem? Because when commercial inventories decline, prices go up. When strategic petroleum reserves decline, prices go down because they are intended to increase supplies and lower prices. So these, yes, it is oil and the same quality oil, but they are completely different animals in terms of impact. And they sum them all together.
We are in a situation right now where the feedstocks to many refineries, I mean, we're close to tank bottoms in a lot of places, and yet that doesn't seem to be reflected, at least in the futures price. Maybe it's reflected in the spot price. There seems to be a disconnect.
Well, there is a misconception about that tank bottom.
Okay.
So I'll explain that. But the idea here is, if you look at the numbers, most of that decline in total inventories, more than 90%, is in strategic petroleum reserves. Remember what they are telling us. They are telling us that it's a global decline in inventories and therefore prices should go up. And the issue here is it's not even global. Most of the decline, about 95% of the decline, is only in two countries, the United States and Japan, and for two different reasons. It's not global. And even if you look at commercial inventories, it's highly concentrated. The decline is highly concentrated, mostly in the US and China. So it cannot be global. The globe, basically, when it comes to inventory, is not that bad. And here, I would like to warn the listeners. People think when I say there is no reason for prices to go up, in a sense, so I sound like not bullish. Not bullish does not mean I am bearish. There is something in between too, okay? So this is kind of a general misconception. If I am not bullish, it does not mean I am bearish, okay? I'm just neutral in this case, because I was not bearish throughout this crisis. The other mistake that's been done was since day one, and if you go back to the beginning, look at all the recordings that I made and all the articles that I've written, all the reports that we shared with our clients, everything else, we said from the beginning that, look, this is going to be the biggest crisis in our lives, and this could be the largest crisis since World War II.
I believe it.
And we said since day one that inventories are going to decline to record lows, especially when it comes to diesel. And I will come back to diesel because it's related to real estate. So this was predicted from day one, that we are going to reach the, not tank bottom, but the inventories are going to decline to historic lows. Then 2 months later, people are saying, oh, you don't see the decline? Didn't you see the decline? Well, I predicted the decline 2 months earlier. Why I have to even keep just pushing that button over and over and over? Okay, there is no reason to waste this time, because we know this. We already know this. We knew the day President Trump announced the release of 172 million barrels from the SPR, we knew we are going to hit the lowest since 1979. Repeating this every day is not going to help anything. It's not going to do anything. We knew this from day one. So I want just to explain what happened to the products, because that's where the crisis is. And I would like to take diesel as an example so everyone in your audience basically understand the level of the crisis of what's been going on. In the Gulf, we had three major refineries. We have a Zohr refinery in Kuwait, we have a Ruwais refinery in the UAE, and we have the mother of all, basically, Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia. Those are inside the Gulf. So when Hormuz basically did not allow those refineries to export their products, they got stuck. So the world lost jet fuel, gasoline, diesel, base oil, all the lubricants, everything else. Now the people around the world are panicking because we are not getting diesel. Again, I'm going to use diesel as an example. So because of that panic, what governments did was exacerbate the crisis. by banning the exports of petroleum products. So we have countries that are good at refining. They have spare refining capacity, and they can export those products. China, one of them, literally banned the exports. Then India came in and imposed taxes. If you are a refiner and you want to export diesel, you have to pay very heavy taxes. So they lowered their exports. And South Korea came in and said, you cannot export as long as we are below this level. If you produce above this level, you can export. So the major countries in Asia, all of them basically curtailed the exports and made the situation worse. So we have the first level coming out of Hormuz. Now the second level is the reaction from those countries that exacerbated the problem. Now prices are going up. If you are a trader and you are convinced with the story and you know diesel prices are going to go up next week, will you sell today?
You see, this is the thing. The analogy that I would use is, if you remember during the pandemic, there was a shortage of toilet paper. Now, was there really a shortage of toilet paper? No, it was hoarding behavior that created gridlock in the system. It's exactly the same phenomenon that you're describing right now. Is as soon as you create hoarding behavior, you remove degrees of freedom in the system, and that creates further gridlock.
Absolutely. So that was another problem. But the issue that became worse is this. And I'm telling you here a real story. So whatever I'm going to talk about is a real story. There was a tanker carrying products basically from India to South Africa. And it was near Tanzania and Madagascar when the crisis happened. So someone in Singapore decided to buy it since prices are going up. So it made a U-turn. Now it's going to Singapore. But someone panicked in China, so decided to buy it. So instead of going to Singapore, now it's going to China. Halfway, someone in Japan panicked. So now it's diverted to Japan. So you can see the map and you can see. But this did not happen to one tanker. This happens to hundreds of tankers. And therefore, we have more oil not reaching the destinations, in addition to everything else we talked about earlier. And therefore, the problem became really bad. As if this not enough, Ukraine continued hitting Russia refineries. And the Trump administration said nothing about it until they kept hitting them, until Russia became an importer instead of an exporter, which means that the products that India is supposed to send to another country in Asia, now Russia is taking it, making the situation worse.
Not to mention all the small tankers in the Sea of Azov.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you add to that another problem, because we have large number of tankers being stuck in the Gulf, or tankers that want to go in. And now tankers, because of the insurance and because of the cost and everything else, have to go around Africa. So we have less tankers available to ship whatever available. And as a result, tanker rates went up and the cost went up. So you look at the whole story like this, and you can see the impact. The damage is so big, just that second quarter data is not out yet. The second thing is, if you believe that some governments are manipulating oil prices, if you believe that, then you better believe they are going to manipulate the economic data too.
Absolutely. I mean, you're not going to get a politician to use the R word. I mean, it's like recession is a 4-letter word, but it's got a lot more letters. They will refuse to use that term even when we're in one. So the only parallel to this is the oil shock in the mid-1970s. And it didn't last that long. Oil prices spiked and eventually it got resolved. But the lasting impact of that was almost a decade of a shadow of inflation and, well, certainly a wage price spiral that took a lot of economic impact in order to reduce demand, dampen demand, and get inflation levels back down to where at least more respectable levels. How do you see this playing out? Because on the one hand, an oil shock is deflationary. You pull energy out of the market, you're reducing economic output. That's a given. But we're also seeing prices increase, and we don't know exactly how this is going to play out, if we go around that loop a few times.
Generally speaking, yes, there are some similarities with the 70s, but we did publish a report in our newsletter basically showing that this crisis is completely different from any other crisis before. And that, at least at that time, that crisis was an oil crisis. Even in some cases, you can call it energy crisis. But the crisis we have now is completely different. Crisis out of the Hormuz Strait is not even oil crisis. The biggest crisis is helium. The biggest crisis is fertilizer.
Yeah.
The biggest crisis is methanol. And you look at the price of aluminum, for example, and other things, etc. And then you look at sulfur. That was not the case in the 70s. The 70s, was a completely different game. You have governments on one side, rational governments on one side, you have rational governments on the other, and they have interests that intersect, and you can negotiate. This is not what we see today. Look at what happened in Saudi Arabia in the last couple of days. You are talking about terrorist groups attacking infrastructure that you don't know where they are, you don't know anything about their locations, you don't know who are they, you know nothing. And those guys basically are not there to build a nation or build a country. They act like drug lords or drug cartels, and drug cartels basically are willing to kill even their own people so they can achieve their financial goals. So this crisis is completely different from anything else that we've seen before, simply because it's not an energy crisis, way, way larger than that. It is a war over control of the waterways, because now we are talking about the Black Sea, we are talking about the Hormuz Strait, we are talking about Bab el-Mandeb, and before that, of course, we have the Panama Canal. And here I would like to share with the audience the following thought. If you want really to understand what's going on in the region, you have to answer this question, and it's up to you after that to analyze what's going on. It's this war, which is unlike the 12-day war that we had before, is either about Iran and its nuclear program, and so therefore it's very specific, and we have clear objectives, and we know what we need to accomplish, or it is part of this global change that is taking place, where we talk about trade wars, sanctions, tariffs, China, Russia, Panama Canal, Venezuela, the Red Sea, Greenland, etc. So do you put Iran and what happened in Hormuz Strait and Bab el-Mandeb among these things? Or it's just that it's about Iran and nuclear program and everything went wrong? So you start from here, and then you decide it's either this one or this one, and then try to use your analysis based on that.
But even if it is let's say, a proxy war of titans, you still have a lot of independent actors that are not at the negotiating table that with a $10,000 drone can effectively close a waterway, even if it just means spiking insurance rates with very, very low investment.
Absolutely. And this is one of the issues that we've been discussing in our writings in the last month or so, on how you have those free riders who, let's assume it's only the United States and Iran. And now many countries and many other groups are saying, okay, how I can take advantage of this. So many people jumped on the wagon as a result. And oil analysts got confused. Why? This does not make sense. Well, it makes sense when you realize that those guys came in later, jumped on the wagon, and everyone is trying to steer that wagon in their own way. And therefore, you have all this confusion. But the issue here is, who is the largest beneficiaries out of what happened?
The U.S. and China.
You can say that, well, it does not mean that the United States, if the United States is the largest beneficiary, that it closed the Hormuz Strait, but benefit from it. That's fine. You can agree. We can agree on that. But the idea here is the benefits to the United States, especially in the long run, are priceless. You are talking about every strategic objective that's been used. Now, I get a criticism on social media, say, well, Trump and his administration are not that smart. So don't tell me, in a sense, they are discounting what I'm saying. They need to realize that when it comes to the United States, the president is now in the office is only for 4 years. There is no time to put this massive plan and act on it. These plans takes long time to prepare, and the military will take long time to prepare, and then whoever president in the White House will execute along his agenda. So what you see today may not be the result of the Trump administration. And I'm going to give you some examples on that. Okay, look how the United States kicked Russian gas out of Europe and took over. Our exports to Europe were zero. Now we are 30% of EU gas. How this happened? Look at the explosion of Nord Stream 1, the closure of Nord Stream 2, the halt of the Ukrainian gas pipeline, and now we have the Turkish Stream basically that might be closed at any time too. As a result of that, you go back and look at the plan. The plan started in 2014 for the Russian gas. And who put the plan? Who was in office in 2014 in the White House?
That was Obama.
Right. But who put the plan to replace Russian gas? Condoleezza Rice.
That's right.
Who was the Secretary of State during the Bush years?
Under Bush, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So she is the one. She is what they call at that time the Sovietologist the expert on Russia and all that stuff. So it's not necessarily that it comes from a Democrat or comes from a certain administration or these issues. So there are issues that are consistent among administrations. So you can tell, we can call it deep state or any other expression, that the deep state basically is working on this. For example, Trump was a supporter of LNG.
Yes.
And Biden was a supporter of LNG.
Initially, but then he put a moratorium.
No, even toward the end, because the thing is, he has to go through election and he has to do something to show environmentalists. So he picked up something for in the future, has no impact on the current market or anything else. Something does not even exist.
Right, true.
At all.
Yeah.
But he was promoter of LNG, and then Trump came in and continued the same thing. So LNG had become an integral part of U.S. foreign policy, and everyone, Democrats and Republicans, agree on that. Look at the war against China, the trade war. Everyone agree on that. Biden was a trade warrior, and Trump was a trade warrior against China. So there are these things that are consistent among administrations. Kicking the Russia out of Europe, basically, and the dominance of Russia in terms of energy, that was consistent throughout administrations. So the question is, don't look at the Hormuz Strait right now, what's going on, as just the product of the Trump administration. This is the product of years of work. And think about this, because people seriously should think about this in a way where things are not as easy as they think. We have the Three Seas crisis, and Zelensky basically is going overboard on bombing the hell out of the Russian refineries. Gasoline prices are high, diesel prices are high, jet fuel prices are high. Not only in that, I'm talking about in other countries.
Yes.
And no one is saying anything about Zelensky and Ukraine. And no one really, look at China, look at India, look at the EU. They did not even bother about what happened in Jazan or Bgeg in Saudi Arabia. For some reason, all of a sudden, hush, hush, just everyone is calm. What's going on? I mean, this is a massive crisis, but everyone is calm. And where is the outrage? Where is the nothing?
So why do you think that's being suppressed? Because, I mean, these are massive issues. They're hard to ignore if you even care to look.
I have no idea. These, I mean, when it comes to the politics of it, I mean, we will know about it if we live long enough. Probably we'll know about it. At this stage, we don't know what the plan and who is behind it, etc. But the bottom line here is we have people jumping on the wagon every day to take advantage of the situation, and they are trying to steer the wagon, and that's creating confusion among many people who do not know the area, do not know the culture. They don't know what's going on.
So for the commercial real estate investor, developer that is looking to underwrite projects that'll be coming out of the ground in 12, 24, 36 months, you've got to be thinking cost of capital. You've got to be thinking about security of supply chains for materials. Materials.
I mean, this is really big. I mean, look at the price of copper and look at the price of, even cement. Basically, you need a lot of energy to make cement.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we even underwrite to that? Do we just underwrite to a base case of elevated energy costs? Do we underwrite to a 20% increase in material costs? What do you think?
I don't know about the percentages, but it is very clear that we are going to go through an inflationary period until something gives in. Something got to give.
Yeah.
If we end up with a collapse in the economies, we end up with a recession, we end up with slow economic growth, we don't know. But we already got confirmation from two big economies, basically, that they have serious problems. Canada already announced a recession,
correct,
as you know.
Yeah.
And China announced the lowest economic growth since the 90s.
That's right.
And the rule of thumb for me when it comes to China is whatever the announced economic growth is, you take out 2%. So they announced 4.3%. So I'm counting on the impact of 2.3%. So something got to give. So in terms of the cost of materials, we know that the cost of materials went up substantially. And the impact on real estate basically is different, as you know, from area to area and from region to region. For the international audience, basically, you know, and I know that some areas in the Gulf and some cities in the Gulf that are known for real estate basically are suffering, and prices declined substantially as a result of this war. At the same time, the issue, we've seen it during COVID, where Ford, I think it was about Ford, had about 40,000 cars parked outside their factories because one part was missing. And they had to wait on it for months until they got it. So the issues related to supply chain are serious issues. At the same time, we have a major change throughout the world. I mean, don't think that this issue, we are going to go back to normal. The Hormuz crisis or the Hormuz ghost
The legacy
is going to stay with us forever. The place is poisoned. That's it. So in terms of reputation, Bab el-Mandeb is poisoned forever. And what people are saying right now is this, whether you are talking about companies or policymakers. So, okay, who is the least affected? The least affected in the short run is China, because China was preparing for it. China knew in advance. I mean, one of the ironies, probably your audience will be surprised to know that one of the ironies is we wrote in our newsletter in June and July last year, immediately after the war, that China got the message that Hormuz Strait will be closed, not by Iran, but by the United States, and China basically is going to prepare for it. That was a year before.
Was their preparation based on Hormuz, or was it based on the Malaga Straits?
We did not know, because we always said, what does China know that we don't know? We thought it was Malacca because Malacca been in the picture for the last 20 years. And it ended up Hormuz, okay, and now Bab el-Mandeb. But the issue here is they prepared for it, and therefore they suffered the least. And now countries are going to say, okay, I'm going to do like China. So they are going to adopt the Chinese model. What is the Chinese model? Linking energy sources to national security. And I can tell you, I taught at prestigious universities before. And I remember talking about government policy and how the threat of government policy basically is really the biggest threat to anything. And here we are saying that we need more government control because of national security. This is really the biggest threat to anything, but it's going to happen. And Hormuz basically is going to give all governments the upper hand in everything. Who are you until you tell the government, no, this is a national security issue. We are going to do it no matter what. Whether it makes economic sense, financial sense or not, doesn't matter. We are going to subsidize it. We are going to give it tax breaks. We are going to do all of that because of national security. So we are going to see all the climate change policies that people are opposed to or they don't have money for being implemented under the umbrella of national security. And of course, they have no choice right now but to go back to coal. So coal is well entrenched. That's why we are bullish on LNG and coal as a result of that. And the whole idea here is governments are going to focus on their domestic sources. And when you focus on domestic sources, the solar and wind basically is going to be a choice. Electric vehicles are going to be a choice. Batteries or storage batteries are going to be the choice. So we are bullish on storage batteries, by the way. So all of these things happen because of Hormuz, and everyone is going to go that way. What that means is we don't have enough money for it. So the borrowing is going to be a big thing. Banks are going to have more control. So all of a sudden we are in a controlled society, whether from the governments or the banks, just because of what happened at Hormuz. And people must understand this is a historic event and is going to have several repercussions on everyone. Even if you are on the other side of the world, you are going to be affected.
Well, honest, this has been fantastic. A lot of insights here, a lot to chew on and to digest and figure out how to incorporate into our underwriting, everyone's underwriting, everyone who's listening to this. You have a newsletter that you run. I've read several, and they're fantastic. If folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, what's the best way?
Well, I put a lot of things on Twitter, and all the contacts basically are through Twitter. We do have the daily energy report, which is more suitable to a lot of people, especially in real estate and those owners of small apartments and units, etc. It's $420 a year, so it's not a big deal. But they can get the full story, because what we do in it is we literally, this report came out of debunking the media and debunking general narratives. And of course, I mean, we are talking about data-based debunking, not kind of an opinion or anything else. And here I would like to take this moment to warn everyone to be careful with the news, question everything in the media, question everything in the social media. Most of the pictures, most of the videos that we reported about Saudi Arabia in the last few days were old, from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, months ago. They were not the real things. There are only a couple of videos that are the right ones. There are many interpretations of what happened are wrong. So be careful with everything you say. The last thing is, one thing is very clear out of all this crisis, that if you seriously think that, or let me rephrase that, the innocence is gone. So doubt everything.
It pains me to internalize that, because I say I'm a little bit idealistic. I was born idealistic, and you're right. Unfortunately, you are absolutely right. I'm not a cynic or a conspiracy theorist, but you're right. And so we do have to question everything. Even this past week, the revelations from Dr. Fauci's diary, where he's contradicting what he said himself in the media, is just further proof of that. So it's really, we got to take that to heart. Well, again, thank you so much. And for the listeners at home, definitely connect with Dr. Anas Alhajji. The links to his Twitter will be in the show notes, as well as his Substack. And in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.